They threatened to take everything from him. No permits, no inspections, just a brutal, icy ultimatum: keep building, and we'll seize your land. Can you imagine that? A man who once stood tall between enemy fire and his brothers in arms, shielding them with his own body, now facing the loss of the only home he had left. They thought he'd just bow his head in defeat. They figured he'd slink away quietly, tail between his legs. Oh, how they underestimated him. They forgot who they were dealing with, a weathered old Marine with a fire in his soul they couldn't snuff out. Behind him stood a loyalty so fierce, so unbreakable, it stretched across battlefields and decades. And when the call for help went out, his comrades didn't just come back to rebuild a farm, no, they stormed back to rebuild a life. They came to shout to the world that true honor never fades, never crumbles, no matter how hard life tries to bury it. Stick with us, because this story, it's going to restore your faith in brotherhood, in gratitude, in promises that hold strong when everything else falls apart. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness light up the darkness. Ready to uncover what really happened? Let's dive in. The rain started early that morning, a soft, relentless drumming against the courthouse windows that seemed to echo the heaviness in Judge Daniel Brooks' chest. He adjusted his robes in his chambers, hands moving mechanically, preparing for what was supposed to be just another ordinary Tuesday. Another docket stuffed with foreclosure cases, petty squabbles, and the endless, soul-crushing march of paperwork over human lives. Daniel rubbed his temples, the dull ache of exhaustion settling deep between his eyes. Lately, every case felt like a repeat: banks gobbling up land, families torn from their roots, faces blurring into a gray haze of despair. Once, he'd burned with a passion for justice. Where had that fire gone? Now, it felt like all he did was push the calendar forward, day after weary day. He glanced down at the first case file on his desk: First National Bank vs. William Carter. Another foreclosure. Another life boiled down to cold ledger lines and signatures. With a heavy sigh, he squared his shoulders and stepped into the courtroom, bracing himself for the routine. The room was nothing fancy: rows of worn wooden benches stretched out beneath harsh fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly overhead. A handful of observers sat scattered across the seats, their faces etched with boredom or quiet anxiety, most just biding time until their own cases came up. Daniel settled behind the elevated bench, nodding to the bailiff, who called out in a sharp, clear voice, "Case number 1982, First National Bank vs. William Carter." The heavy doors groaned open, and in shuffled a frail old man, leaning slightly on a public defender who looked young enough to still need a learner's permit. The old man wore a battered brown coat that dangled off his thin frame like a sad flag, a faded baseball cap clutched in his trembling hands, and boots so cracked their soles flapped with every step. But oh, there was something in the way he held himself. Even hunched, even broken down, there was a solidity, a quiet strength that refused to shatter, no matter how hard the world had tried. Daniel squinted, leaning forward just a bit. The clerk cleared his throat. "State your full name, sir." The old man's voice rasped out, low but steady as steel. "William Carter, Colonel, United States Marine Corps, retired." Daniel's heart lurched. Did it really just skip a beat? The courtroom melted away, swallowed by a flood of memories so vivid they hit like a punch. A scorching desert sun, the crack of gunfire splitting the air, the shriek of twisting metal as an ambush tore their convoy apart outside Fallujah. And there, right in the heart of that chaos, stood Colonel William Carter, larger than life, hurling himself into the fire to save his men. To save him. Daniel Brooks, a terrified young lieutenant, owed his life to that man. He gripped the edge of his bench until his knuckles turned white, the courtroom's hum fading to a distant roar. This couldn't be him. That hero, that titan, couldn't be this hollow-eyed figure standing here now, teetering on the edge of losing everything. Daniel cleared his throat, fighting to steady himself. "Proceed," he croaked, his voice rougher than he meant it to be. The attorney for First National Bank rose, a sleek woman in a crisp navy suit, shuffling her papers with the cold precision of a machine. Your Honor, the defendant has been in default on his property loan for over 18 months. Attempts to negotiate a payment plan have failed. The bank seeks immediate foreclosure on the property at 1120 Hollow Creek Road, with a full eviction order to follow. Her words barely registered. Daniel's eyes were locked on William Carter. The old Marine stood ramrod straight despite the pain etched into every line of his face. Old habits, it seemed, died hard. His gaze, clear yet weighed down by years, met Daniel's for a fleeting second, and a lump swelled in Daniel's throat. Did he even know who was sitting up here? Does the defendant have representation? Daniel asked, pushing through the storm raging in his mind. The young public defender coughed nervously. Yes, Your Honor. Charles Dugan for the defendant. We, request consideration for an extension based on extenuating circumstances. The bank's lawyer snapped back, sharp as a whip. Your Honor, the bank has already granted multiple extensions. We can't keep absorbing losses forever. Daniel raised a hand, silencing the bickering. Legal details. They didn't matter now. His mind was back on that sun-blasted road, with a man bellowing orders over the roar of gunfire, dragging wounded Marines to safety with blood-streaked hands. A man who, in a moment burned into Daniel's soul, threw himself into the open to shield Daniel's Humvee from a rocket. A bullet had slammed into Carter's chest. Daniel had been sure he was gone. But he'd lived. And now here he was, felled not by war, but by the slow grind of debt in a world that forgot its heroes too fast. Daniel leaned back, steepling his fingers. Colonel Carter, he said, voice steady now, would you mind telling the court, in your own words, how you got here? The room went still as a graveyard. Carter shifted, cleared his throat. After the Corps, I ran the family farm, he said, simple and straight. Been in my family 3 generations. His voice was rough, slow, like he wasn't used to talking much. Got hurt bad a few years back injuries. Can't work the land like I used to. Crop yields dropped. Costs didn't. Bank offered a loan. Took it. Thought I'd catch up next season. He shrugged, a tiny, broken gesture. Next season never got better. The bank's lawyer started to speak, but Daniel's glare stopped her cold. No family to help, he asked, softer now. Carter shook his head. Son died overseas. Afghanistan. The word slammed into Daniel like a hammer. His jaw tightened, his mind screaming for a way out, a miracle. But in a courtroom, miracles were rare as gold. You're honored, Dad, but, the bank's lawyer ventured again, cautious this time, while we respect Mr. Carter's service, it doesn't erase his legal obligations. Daniel exhaled slow and deep. She was right, technically. But some debts went beyond banknotes. He looked at Carter again. The old Marine stood tall, not begging, not whining, just facing the storm head-on, like he had in Fallujah. Daniel's chest ached with it. This wasn't just a foreclosure. This was a debt from a battlefield, a bond of loyalty and duty left unpaid. And Daniel Brooks? He didn't leave debts hanging. He tapped his gavel light but firm. This court will recess for 15 minutes. He stood fast and slipped into his chambers, heart pounding like a war drum. Alone behind the door, he yanked out his phone with shaky hands, scrolling to a number he hadn't dialed in years, General Patrick Langston. If anyone could help, could find a way to make this right, with honor, it was him. Daniel hit call, pulse racing. Out in the courtroom, William Carter stood alone, a solitary figure against a world that had nearly erased him. But not for long, not if Daniel had a say. In his chambers, the faint courthouse buzz hummed around him like static. His phone rang once, twice, then a gruff voice growled, "Brooks, you still breathing, old man?" Daniel cracked a thin smile. "General Langston, I need a favor." It's urgent. A pause, then the voice softened. What's up? Daniel swallowed hard, eyeing the file on his desk, William Carter in stark black letters. Colonel Carter's in my courtroom, about to lose his farm. Silence, then a curse under Langston's breath, a rare slip. You sure it's him? I'd stake my life on it, Daniel rasped. Did once already. Langston exhaled sharp. What do you need? Daniel's mind spun. They couldn't just halt the case, too messy, too humiliating for Carter. No, this had to be dignified, powerful. Reach out to the Veterans Emergency Legal Fund, he said, and the Valor Foundation. Pull every string. We need something by this afternoon. You got it, Langston said, no hesitation. And Daniel, thanks for not letting him face this alone. The call cut off, leaving Daniel staring at an old photo on the wall, a younger him, grinning beside Marines in Iraq's sands. Carter, arms slung over his shoulders, stood at the center, a giant among men. Daniel shut his eyes, letting the memories flood him, courage, sacrifice, a debt he'd never repaid. He straightened up and marched back to the courtroom. The room stirred as he returned. Carter hadn't budged, still standing tall despite the weight of years. The bailiff eyed him, sensing the crackle in the air. Daniel sat, tapped his gavel. Proceed, he said, voice calm as stone. The bank's lawyer stood, all polished efficiency. Your Honor, while we acknowledge Mr. Carter's service, debts are due. Sentiment can't pay bills. Daniel kept his face blank, but inside, he was raging. How could she be so callous? Young Dugan fidgeted beside Carter, fumbling his notes. Poor kid was in over his head. Your Honor, if I may, he started, but the bank's lawyer plowed on. Our client seeks immediate foreclosure, eviction within 30 days. 30 days. In winter. For a man who'd taken bullets for his country. Daniel set his pen down slow, deliberate. Before we go further, he said, pinning the lawyer with his gaze, I want to hear from Mr. Carter directly. A ripple ran through the gallery. Carter blinked, surprised, but stepped up with that same quiet dignity. Colonel Carter, Daniel said, the title a badge of reverence, tell us about Hollow Creek Farm. Carter cleared his throat, voice steady. My grandfather built it after World War I, wanted a piece of his own land. Raised my dad there. I grew up running through the fields, tending cattle, fixing fences after storms. His hands shook, but his words held firm. After the Corps, I took over when Dad passed. Kept it going. It ain't fancy, ain't big, but it's home. It's, he faltered, emotion flashing across his face, all I've got left. Daniel felt every word sink into the room like stones. The bank's lawyer shifted, uneasy. And the loan? Daniel pressed. Needed equipment, Carter said plain. Tractors wear out. So do knees and backs. Thought I'd work it off. Thought I could handle it. A dry, sad chuckle escaped him. Pride don't fix a bad harvest. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with the raw truth of it all. The courtroom hummed with a restless quiet, punctuated by a few soft coughs that bounced off the wood-paneled walls like whispers of unease. Someone in the gallery dabbed at their eyes with a crumpled tissue, their sniffles a faint echo of the sorrow hanging heavy in the air. Judge Daniel Brooks leaned back in his chair, his dark robe blending into the shadows of the bench, letting the silence stretch, oh, how it stretched, forcing every soul in that room to feel the crushing weight of what they were about to strip away from this man. How could they even consider it? How could they sit there, poised to rob a hero of the last piece of earth he called his own? And then, just as Daniel parted his lips to speak, the courtroom doors burst open with a groan that halted time itself. Every head whipped around, eyes wide with curiosity and shock. 3 figures stormed in, 2 men in crisp suits, their ties knotted tight like armor, and a woman whose stride was so fierce it could have cracked the marble floor beneath her boots. They carried thick folders, stuffed to bursting with secrets, and marched straight to the defense table with the urgency of soldiers on a mission. One thrust a folded sheet into Dugan's trembling hands, the young public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, while another shot Daniel a nod that carried the weight of a promise. Dugan fumbled the paper open, his bewilderment plain as day. His eyes ballooned, and he stammered, Your Honor, new evidence has just been presented on behalf of Mr. Carter. His voice cracked, a nervous hiccup in the stillness. Daniel arched an eyebrow, his pulse quickening. Proceed, he said, calm as a still lake, though inside, something stirred. Dugan cleared his throat, steadying himself like a man stepping onto thin ice, and read aloud, due to newly surfaced documentation and testimonies concerning Mr. Carter's distinguished military service, combined with financial mismanagement on the part of First National Bank, including inappropriate loan structuring in predatory terms not fully disclosed to the borrower, we respectfully petition this court to halt foreclosure proceedings pending a full investigation. Each word landed like a stone, rippling through the room. The bank's attorney, a sharp woman in a gray suit, spluttered, her polished facade shattering. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, she protested, her voice shrill with indignation. Daniel fixed her with a stare so piercing it could have split granite. So was Colonel Carter taking a bullet for this country when he didn't have to, he snapped, his words a thunderclap that silenced her and everyone else. Oh, the stillness that followed. It was as if the room held its breath, stunned by the raw truth of it. He turned to Carter, his gaze softening but unwavering. Colonel, are you willing to allow this investigation to proceed on your behalf? The old Marine straightened, his spine snapping to attention as if summoned by a long-forgotten drill sergeant. His eyes, once dulled by despair, gleamed sharp and fierce now. Yes, sir, he said, his voice steady, resolute. Daniel nodded, a firm, decisive jerk of his chin. This court hereby grants a stay of foreclosure. All proceedings are paused pending a full inquiry. He brought the gavel down once, bang, the sound slicing through the air like a gunshot, final and unshakable. The courtroom exploded. Murmurs swelled into cheers, muffled behind cupped hands, while quiet sobs of relief broke free from the gallery. William Carter blinked, his weathered face a canvas of stunned disbelief. He wasn't losing his farm, not today, not without a fight. Could this really be happening? Daniel rose, gathering his papers with a deliberate calm, but before he stepped away from the bench, he paused. His eyes locked onto Carter's, and his voice dropped low, carrying across the room like a sacred oath. Some debts can never be measured in dollars, he declared, then turned and strode out, leaving those words to linger, heavy and haunting, in the hearts of all who heard them. Outside, the rain had ceased its relentless drumming. The first frail rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, bathing the courthouse steps in a pale golden glow. It was as if the heavens themselves sighed in relief. Inside, a battle once deemed lost had shifted, not with weapons, not with riches, but with the unbreakable forces of memory, loyalty, and an honor that refused to fade. The courthouse emptied slowly, a trickle of footsteps and hushed voices, but Daniel lingered behind the bench, his gaze fixed on William Carter. The old Marine gathered his meager belongings into a battered canvas bag, his movements slow and deliberate. There was no victory in his stance, only a quiet endurance, the same stoic dignity that had carried him through hellfire and back. How does a man bear that weight for so long? Daniel wondered, his chest tightening. He tapped the gavel once more, a soft knock this time, just enough to draw Carter's eye. Colonel Carter, he said, his voice low but firm, would you stay for a moment, please? William paused, straightened, and nodded, his hand brushing the brim of his worn cap in a reflex born of decades saluting. The young public defender, sensing something sacred unfolding, mumbled about paperwork and bolted, while the bank's lawyer had long since fled, her heels clicking a frantic retreat down the marble hall. Soon, it was just them, a judge and a soldier, wrapped in the heavy hush of a courtroom where justice had transcended law. Daniel descended from the bench, each step slow and reverent, as if approaching a shrine. At ground level, he saw the toll time had taken on Carter, skin stretched thin over sharp bones, eyes still keen but circled by an exhaustion that seemed carved into his soul. Yet he stood at parade rest, habit or pride? Maybe both. You don't recognize me, do you? Daniel asked softly, stopping a few feet away. William squinted, a flicker of confusion shadowing his face. I should, he rasped, his voice rough but honest, like he was sifting through a haze of buried years. Daniel's faint smile carried a lifetime of gratitude. Fallujah, November 2004. You pulled me out of a burning Humvee. I was a lieutenant then, barely more than a kid. A spark flared in William's tired eyes. I remember a lot of fire, he murmured, his voice drifting, a lot of kids who should have never had to see what they saw. Daniel swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. You carried me 40 yards under heavy fire. Took a bullet that should have been mine. William shrugged, almost sheepish. Was my job, he said simply. No. Daniel's voice tightened, raw with emotion. That was above and beyond anyone's job. You saved my life, Colonel. The words hung there, stark and real, a wound reopened and soothed all at once. William shifted, uneasy under the weight of such thanks. You'd have done the same, he muttered, deflecting. Daniel nodded slowly. Maybe. But you actually did. They stood in silence, two men tethered by decades of unspoken sacrifice, the air thick with understanding. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat, steadying himself. I want you to know today wasn't about pity. It was about respect, about settling a debt that never should have gone unpaid this long. William blinked, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. I don't want charity, he said gruffly, the Marine in him still defiant, still proud. Daniel's smile warmed, like a brother's. It's not charity, he said firmly. It's brotherhood. He stepped closer, his voice a whisper now. And you're not alone, Colonel. Not anymore. William's jaw clenched, his gaze dropping to the scuffed floor. It took him a long moment to speak, and when he did, it was a whisper so faint Daniel nearly missed it. Feels like I've been alone a long time. Daniel's hand found the older man's shoulder, steady and strong. Not anymore, he repeated, each syllable a vow. Outside, the clouds had parted fully, washing the marble steps in soft afternoon light. The storm was gone, and with it, a shadow that had lingered far too long. That afternoon, the courthouse buzzed with a quiet, electric chaos. Black SUVs rolled up to the steps, a sight that stopped passers-by in their tracks. Out stepped Marines, older men with canes or proud chests beneath civilian suits, younger ones fresh from service, all marked by the indelible stamp of duty. At their head strode General Patrick Langston, his presence a force even in plain clothes. They filed in with a silent purpose that made the air crackle. Daniel met them at the door, his heart pounding but his stance firm. General, he said, offering a crisp handshake. Judge, Langston replied, his grip iron. Where's Colonel Carter? Daniel gestured to a side hallway where William sat alone on a bench, hat in his lap, shoulders bowed by battles unseen. When he looked up and saw them, a dozen Marines spanning generations, his face cracked open with recognition, disbelief, and a pride buried deep but stirring awake. Was this real? Langston stopped before him, straightened, and saluted slowly, deliberately. Colonel Carter, he said, voice thick with feeling, we found you. William stared, blinking back tears he refused to let fall. And we're not letting you go through this alone, Langston added, softer now. One by one, the Marines saluted, a chain of honor linking past and present. William rose, shaky but determined, returning the gesture with trembling fingers. Tears stung Daniel's eyes, and he wasn't alone, the clerk stood frozen, awestruck by the moment's purity. Langston smiled, fierce pride in his gaze, and handed over a thick folder. Here are enough affidavits, letters of support, and financial pledges to pay off your loan, and to restore Hollow Creek Farm. William's mouth opened, but no sound came. "Your farm's going to stay yours," Langston said gently, "and we'll help fix it up, too. You won't fight this alone anymore." "Why?" William croaked, hoarse and broken. "Why would you all do this?" Langston's grin blazed with loyalty. "Because you led us when it mattered most. Now it's our turn." William sagged against the wall, overwhelmed, not by defeat, but by the staggering weight of being remembered. As the courthouse cleared, Daniel stepped onto the steps and gazed at the sunset, golden and serene. "Some debts can't be repaid," he thought, "but sometimes, you get to try." And he would. 2 days later, a battered pickup rattled up the dirt road to Hollow Creek Farm. William sat rigid beside Daniel, clutching his cap, as the judge dodged potholes with care. The land sprawled before them, brown, weary, beaten by too many harsh seasons. The farmhouse sagged, its once proud white siding and blue shutters faded to ghosts. The barn tilted, roof caving in, fences toppled, fields choked with weeds. William's chest ached. This wasn't home, it was a ruin. Could he even resurrect it? Daniel stopped near the porch, cutting the engine. Silence fell, heavy with grief. "You didn't have to drive me," William rasped. Daniel smiled faintly. "I wasn't letting you face this alone." William hesitated, hand on the door. "It's worse than I remembered," he muttered, voice thick. Daniel nodded, feeling the pain in those words. "It's just a starting point," he said softly, "not the end." He stepped out, and William followed, stiff and favoring his knee. They stood together, staring at the wreckage of memory. Then, a rumble grew, faint, then loud. William turned, brow furrowing. What now? A convoy rolled in, pickups, flatbeds, a battered school bus, flags snapping in the breeze, Marine Corps, American, old unit banners. Volunteers poured out, men and women, young and old, in work boots and service jackets, some limping, others hefting tools. Langston led them, sleeves up, grinning wide. William gaped. "You didn't think we'd let you rebuild alone, did you?" Langston boomed, clapping his shoulder. Laughter and cheers erupted. I don't know what to say," William stammered, throat burning. "Then don't, Colonel. Just work." Langston laughed. The hours blurred into a miracle, barn doors flung wide, rot hauled away, fresh lumber stacked high from local donors who'd heard the tale. The farm stirred awake, and with it, William's spirit lifted, reborn in the hands of those who refused to let him fall. Imagine a crisp morning alive with purpose. Can you hear it? The sharp ring of hammers as one crew tirelessly replaces the sagging, storm-beaten roof of the farmhouse, each nail a defiant shout against years of neglect. Across the yard, another team wrestles with the stubborn earth, pounding fence posts deep into the ground, their muscles straining as if to anchor not just wood, but a legacy. And the kids, oh, the kids, they scramble around like joyful tornadoes, paintbrushes dripping with bright white hope, splashing life onto the weathered siding of Colonel William Carter's old home. This isn't just a repair job, it's a resurrection. Daniel, a man more accustomed to books than beams, finds himself hauling splintered wood alongside Torres, a grizzled Marine who lost a leg in Fallujah. Does it slow him down? Not a chance. Torres outworks half the crew, his grit a quiet roar against the odds. "You know," he says, swiping sweat from his brow with a grin, "Colonel Carter used to say, if your arms ain't trembling and your back ain't screaming, you ain't earned your dinner yet." Daniel laughs, breathless and awed. "Sounds about right, doesn't it?" he gasps, feeling the truth of it in his aching shoulders. Those words aren't just a saying, they're a battle cry for souls who refuse to quit. Nearby, William Carter moves among them, slow and deliberate, his back bowed like an old oak after too many storms. His steps falter, but his eyes, oh, those eyes, they gleam with a fragile, newborn hope that could break your heart. He checks every nail, every beam, his gnarled hands trembling not from age, but from a gratitude so deep it's almost too much to bear. Can you imagine what it's like to see your life pieced back together by strangers who care? It's not just the farm he's reclaiming, it's himself. But not everyone's cheering. Picture this, a sleek black sedan lurking at the end of the dirt road, a predator in the shadows. Inside sits Councilman Richard Honland, his eyes narrowed to slits, fingers drumming a restless, angry rhythm on the steering wheel. This man's got plans, big, greedy plans, for Hollow Creek Farm. Corporate towers, fat kickbacks, the works. Carter's foreclosure was supposed to seal the deal, but now it's slipping away, and Hanlon's fury is a coiled spring. This isn't over, he snarls under his breath, venom dripping from every word. He snatches his phone and barks, "I don't care what you have to do, find a way to stop this. Codes, zoning, anything." The call ends with a snap, his jaw clenched tight. Does William Carter really think he can rise from the ashes? Hanlon's determined to prove him wrong. As dusk falls, the pace slows, and something magical happens. Volunteers gather around a rickety table, an old door propped on sawhorses, sharing steaming bowls of chili and golden cornbread under twinkling strings of lights. William sits at the head, protesting feebly at first, "No, I don't deserve this." But the stubborn love of his comrades overwhelms him. Someone presses a chipped mug of coffee into his hands, another slides a plate of food his way. "You earned it, Colonel," a voice calls, warm as the meal itself. He blinks at the crowd, veterans from battles old and new, strangers bound by something stronger than blood. Then, for the first time in years, William laughs. It's rusty at first, like an engine sputtering to life, but soon it blooms, rich, full, unstoppable. The sound sweeps through the farmyard, a wave of joy that lifts every heart. Can you feel it? Above, stars pierce the velvet sky, below, Hollow Creek Farm breathes again, nail by nail, memory by memory. They're not just rebuilding a farm, they're rebuilding a life. The next morning dawns golden and sharp, doesn't it just promise something grand? Birds sing through the crisp air, mingling with the scent of fresh lumber and turned earth. The farm, though still rough around the edges, already stands taller, like a man shaking off decades of despair. William's on the porch, coffee steaming in his grip, watching new volunteers roll in, some from nearby towns, others from states away. Word spread like wildfire. This isn't just a local fix-up anymore, it's a beacon of hope, loyalty, and defiance against oblivion. His fingers tighten around the mug. He never asked to be a symbol, but oh, how it swells his chest to know he's fighting a battle worth every scar. Trouble crashes in before noon, though, can you believe it? A white county truck tears up the driveway, kicking dust into furious clouds. Two city officials leap out, clipboards clutched like weapons, their faces hard with bureaucratic smugness. General Langston, Daniel Brooks, and a handful of volunteers cluster near the porch, tense and ready. The taller official flips his clipboard open with a dramatic flourish. "We've got a complaint, unauthorized construction," he booms. "No permits, no inspections. This is under a stop work order." Gasps ripple through the crowd. William steps forward, jaw set like iron. "This is my land," he declares, voice steady as a drumbeat. "These people are fixing what's mine." The official shrugs, can you imagine the nerve? Rules are rules. No permits, no work. Fines or seizure could follow. Daniel's jaw tightens, he knows who's behind this. Honland. That snake's striking again. Langston leans in, his voice cold as a blade. "You're telling a decorated Marine he can't fix his own house." The official stammers, caught off guard by the fury building around him. But Daniel's ready. Oh, is he ready? He strides forward, black robes trailing like a warrior's cape, and says, "Check those regulations again, gentlemen." His voice is smooth, but sharp. "This morning, I filed an emergency petition for a veteran status exemption under the Historical Property Preservation Act. He slaps a thick folder into their hands, smiling like a fox. The judge who signed it? Me. These repairs are protected, no permits needed, no fines allowed. Interfere, and it's harassment of a veteran heritage site. Langston chuckles, checkmate. The officials scramble, faces paling as they realize they're beaten. They retreat to their truck and peel out, dust trailing their defeat. The crowd erupts in cheers, relief, triumph, pure joy. William stands there, stunned, his heart too full for words. Daniel claps him on the back, gentle but firm. "You're not alone anymore, Colonel," he says softly. Langston grins, "You never were. You just forgot, we're here to remind you." That afternoon, the farm hums with new life. Hammers sing, shingles fly up, fences rise faster than William can blink. At the center, volunteers hoist a gleaming flagpole, its base marked by a stone carved with truth, Hollow Creek Farm, in honor of Colonel William Carter and all those who gave everything and asked nothing. 2 Marines raise a crisp flag, the fabric snapping in the breeze. William stands tall, eyes shining with tears he won't let fall, surrounded by a family he never knew he had. Every head bows, every hand rests over a heart as the flag climbs high, unfurling against the sky. Langston barks, "Attention," and veterans salute, crisp, proud. Daniel's hand presses to his chest, standing firm. William's arm shakes as he salutes, not from frailty, but from the tidal wave of emotion crashing inside him. When it's done, he turns to the crowd, voice rough but steady. "I thought nobody remembered," he says, raw and real. "Thought it didn't matter anymore." He scans their faces, calloused hands, loyal hearts, and chokes up. "I was wrong. Thank you, for reminding me." A cheer explodes, louder than thunder, and William knows this farm isn't just his, it's theirs, a testament to honor that endures when the world forgets. Twilight settles, and the farm glows, fresh paint, sturdy fences, laughter weaving through the fields. Kids dart among hay bales, veterans swap tales under the porch light. William, once lost, stands at the heart of it all, a living proof that even the battered can rise with a chance. As the sun dips low, he gazes at the flag, his old platoon motto whispering in his mind, steady and sure. No one left behind. Tonight, he believes it, really believes it, again. The story of Colonel William Carter, a retired Marine facing the loss of his family farm, hits me hard. It's a raw, emotional punch that exposes how shamefully we often treat our veterans. I'm furious that a man who gave so much for his country could be left drowning in debt, battling a heartless bank while a greedy councilman lurks in the background. It's disgraceful, a stark reminder that our society's priorities are twisted, valuing profit over people. Yet, what truly stirs my soul is the way his fellow Marines and a principled judge step up. That's the heartbeat of community, loyalty and gratitude in action. It fills me with hope and pride, proving that honor and human connection can still triumph over bureaucracy and greed. This isn't just a story, it's a blazing call to action. We owe our veterans more than empty thanks, we owe them real support, a system that fights for them as fiercely as they fought for us. I passionately believe we must rethink how we treat those who've sacrificed everything. Their struggles demand our outrage, our voices, and our unwavering commitment to justice. Kindness finds a way, doesn't it? Even in the quietest corners, where no one seeks glory, just the certainty that someone's fed, someone's remembered. That alone can change everything. Forget this story, and history falls silent, so subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where justice shines, kindness endures, and no quiet heroism fades away.